I come decorated in the patterns of the old, in the proverbial wisdom of my ancestors. I, a seeker, I, a messenger, and I, the message. We who cracked the mystery of how the river found its way into the bellies of the coconut to the heavens. We were queens, defenders of our lands, before history was thwarted to fit into the pages of the new narratives. Afamefula of the Enugu coal mine and Wanyeruwa of the Oloko women riot wouldn't have existed today, for we have been bruised and broken, as do the land suffer. And weep, for she yearns to be weeded and nurtured to flourish. Her children no longer have respect for her. Nsani is now the new norm. We are daughters of Annie. Once upon a time, a finger raised on a daughter provoked the community to rise, for a sacrilege has been committed. But now, the communities take pride in trampling on their daughters, for they have been made to believe that their daughters are weak and fragile and less to participate in community development. Omem omonwea. For if only they know, Ogunangba, nwoke si nwoke emeghị nwaanyị emeghị nwoke nwaanyị anaghị eme taa nwaanyị bụ ife, nwaanyị bụ mmụọ ala. I came from the land of queens and kings, for my ancestors had the philosophy of duality, for there is femininity in masculinity and masculinity in femininity. My ancestors knew that. When they said, nwoke di na nwaanyị di na nwoke, ihe kwuru, ihe akwudobe ya, for what is and what is not are one. Anyu mitu gbogoro, ugbogoro amita anyu. Umofia kwanyere agbala di na chielo ugwu, eze nwaanyị ugwu na ndịda. Kedu ka mmiri si wee baa n'opi ugbogoro? Ọ na-abụ enwe machariwa, ọ dịka ukwu osisi anọghị ya nso, ọ ga-emenwu ya, ọ tụrụ kpọkpọ, ejikwanụ ike ya atụkpọ osisi. Anyụ mitu gbogoro amịta anyụ.
Called Everybody Has a Purpose. It's from our CD, Everybody Has a Purpose.
Hello, welcome to World Inkers Network. I know you guys are excited about this program, our post-colonial poetry, the Traumatized Race Speaks Up. So greetings to all following Thanksgiving Day in the United States. I'm Dustin Pickering, and I hope everyone had an excellent holiday. This morning, we're going to bring you Post-Colonial Poetry, the Traumatized Race Speaks Up webinar. In today's global society, we must learn to cultivate civilization through diversity and respect for those outside of our communities as well as those within them. This webinar intends to raise consciousness of political and social issues through art and simultaneously unveil the purpose of culture to show our bearings and sustain our lives. This webinar invites PRIYANKA BANERJEE, Beukes, Selwyn Milborrow, and Eugene Skeef in discussion about the art of language and the struggle against apartheid. Jagari Mukherjee will present on Toru Dutt, India's foremother of poetry in English. We will have poetry recitations from Pankhuri Sinha in India and ZMYs in the United States. Our musical guests, which you just saw, are Joe Kidd and Sheila Burke, got to reverse in order there, and they will be featured during our breaks. All in all, this is an educational talk forum. We aim to investigate the meaning of post-colonial literature, its necessity in the contemporary world, and have purposeful discussion regarding the social sphere of influences. Feel free to leave comments during the program. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for being with us and enjoy. I'm going to bring PRIYANKA BANERJEE on to discuss Native American literature and its importance and its renaissance. Thank you, PRIYANKA. How are you? Good to see you.
Hello, Dustin. Yeah, hello, Skeef. I'm PRIYANKA BANERJEE from India. So, thank you, Dustin, for organizing this wonderful webinar. And today's topic is the traumatized race speaks up. We all know that post-colonial literature has become, it had already become a very, very popular, throughout the world. And it's about many issues. It's about race. It's about gender issues. It's about, the center margin conflict. It's about borders. So it's not very easy to focus on one single aspect while discussing about post-colonial literature. So today I would like to discuss certain features of Native American literature. I would love to read out from a certain section from a research paper written by me. So when we are talking about post-colonial literature, post-colonial Native American literature, the first thing that comes in our mind is the fact that how internal colonization affects literature, because Native Americans, they were internally colonized by the Euro-Americans, and through poetry, through novels, through drama, they try to resist that process of cultural domination, which make them suffer from a feeling of identity crisis. So, they are very much in love with nature. They believe in, community culture. They are very, very attached with land. They love beasts and birds. But the materialistic attitude to life, which, which was instilled into their minds by the imperial forces, was rejected by them, and they tried to resist it through literature. In fact, they are very much traditional. They try to talk about their traditional beliefs, their oral stories, their superstitious beliefs in spirits, their their beliefs in the birds and the bees. They think that these birds also, they affect human lives, and they have their very own music. They have their very own dance, like ghost dance. So these are the parts of their culture. These are the parts of their existence. These are the parts of their identity, and one cannot destroy them, one cannot ruin them. But that process of internal colonization is continuously affecting their lives. That's ruining their soul, and they're attached with the center of the universe. If we read the novels of Momaday, Leslie Marmon Silko, Linda Hogan, we will, if we read the poems of Joy Harjo, we will definitely, get acquainted with this radical, dynamic nature of Native American literature. So today I'd like to read out from one of my research papers in which I have written about Native American Renaissance. So what has been called the Native American Renaissance dates from 1969, when Kiowa author and poet N. Scott Momaday was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for his novel House Made of Dawn, and Lakota intellectual Deloria published his classic treatise Custer Died for Your Sins, an Indian Manifesto. Although the assigning of a date to this rebirth may seem arbitrary, 1969 remains a seminal year in studies in Native American literature, whether the appellation Native American Renaissance is applied or not. According to James Rupert, in 1969, the landscape of Native American literature changed. Not only was there increased public interest in writing by Native Americans, but also Native writers felt inspired and encouraged. Suddenly, it seemed impossible. It's impossible that they could be successful with their writing and still remain true to their unique experience. Perhaps the most significant contribution made by Momaday and Deloria was to focus that experience through the lens of identity. Their influence has been profound, as indicated by Louis Owens, who writes the recovering or rearticulation of an identity, a process dependent upon a rediscovered sense of place as well as community, a truly enormous undertaking. This attempt is at the center of American Indian fiction. Okay, so it reminds us of Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. It also reminds us of Derek Walcott's drama. It also reminds us of Toru Dutt's poetry. Jagari Mukherjee will be, presenting a paper on Toru Dutt's poetry. She's an Indian English poet. Well, so all these post-colonial writers are continuously and desperately trying to resist that process of colonization, to resist those imperial forces from, altering, transforming the pattern of their life. And in a bid to do that, they are creating poems, they are creating, their original literary masterpieces through which they are, giving the answer back to those imperial forces. The empire writes back. We all know, we all have read the book. Now, I would like to quote from one of the very famous Native American literary text, that is Ceremony, written by Leslie Marmon Silko. She's a wonderful American Indian writer, and this text, Ceremony, is about Tayo's realization Tayo is, is a tribe, and he ultimately realizes in this novel how the whites took almost everything, but it is the Indians who must assume social and political responsibility for its return. I would like to quote from the text Ceremony. I hope that you all will love these lines. These lines wonderfully encapsulate that, very essence of post-colonial literature. He wanted to kick their soft white bodies into the Atlantic Ocean. He wanted to scream to all of them that they were trespassers and thieves. He wanted to follow them as they hunted the mountain lion, to shoot them and their howling dogs with their own guns. The destroyers had sent them to ruin this world, and day by day they were doing it. He wanted to scream at Indians like Hurley and Helen Gian and Imo that the white things they admired so much, the bright city lights and loud music, the soft sweet food and the cars, all these things had been stolen, torn out of Indian land, raw living materials for their Chico manipulation. Finally, I would also love to read out a few lines from a poem that is a part of the text Ceremony. This is a wonderful poem. They kill what they fear. Entire villages will be wiped out. They will slaughter whole tribes. Corpses for us, blood for us. Killing, 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 killing. Okay, so that's all about my introduction to Native American literature. Now I would request Dustin to request our guest Skeef to talk about his participation in anti-apartheid movement, his poetry, his music. He is a multi-talented personality, a legendary musician. We feel extremely honored tonight because he's with us. So we all welcome you, dear Skeef, wholeheartedly. Please talk about. Let us, get illumined by your words.
I'm bringing all of our guests on right now: Eugene Skeef, Selwyn Milborrow, and Don Beukes. If you guys will unmute and we'll participate in a discussion here. I'll let Eugene talk a little bit about himself and his participation in anti-apartheid resistance. And so that's a very interesting topic for today's discussion. So tell us a little bit about the struggle and your experiences.
Thank you, Dustin, and thank you, Priyanka, for that very stimulating introductory contribution. Well, I'm stunned by your ideas. Thank you very much. I love what you're doing. As you all know, I'm from South Africa, and but I currently I've been living for quite many years in London, in the UK, because I was forced to come into exile in 1980 because of my work with the great Steve Biko of the Black Consciousness Movement, the famous anti-apartheid activist and leader. What I decided to do was in preparing for this historic event was to put some words together that substantiate my position in terms of how I view the whole concept of post-colonialism. So words, a little text, and some poems. And I title my contribution, "I Am the Earth." I don't believe in the existence, personally, of post-colonialism. I believe we have a state in this world that reminds me of the term kwela in South African township jazz. Kwela indicates a harmonic modulation, the chordal shift. This chordal shift creates the impression of change, a movement that raises the scope and hope of the audience's emotional response. But the music remains the same, really. What we have today in the world is a modulation of colonialism, but it is still colonialism. The sooner we understand this sort of sleight of hand, the better we will be prepared to cope with the real truth of the effect of this conceptual trickery. The avaricious craft of contemporary capitalism is different primarily in its sophistication, but it is still colonialism in the depravity of its fundamental objective, which is the accumulation of wealth through extreme greed and material gain. Colonization involves an unsolicited settling among a people and establishing political control over them and their land and exploiting them and its natural resources. So I ask you, show me anywhere in Africa and the so-called former colonies where this is not currently the case. The term post-colonial implies that colonialism is dead, whereas it is very much alive and well. Colonialism is thriving. Nonetheless, coming away from this stance and accepting that mine is not the mainstream perspective on the matter of so-called post-colonialism, I am prepared to look squarely at what we are faced with. We in the so-called former colonies are better off reckoning history according to our own timelines. The roots, or as the Americans would say, routes, so the roots and routes of which predate colonialism in all its manifestations. In opting for this perspective on colonialism, I am positing my adherence to an ideological outlook founded on a creatively critical engagement of the truth about colonialism. I am manifesting my freedom of expression and choice. I am affirming my independence. I remember as a young man growing up in South Africa, I used to design my own clothes with the help of my aunt, Katie Gupega. I made a creative statement against the expectation of macho behavior as a male, for example, by asking my aunt to stitch a powder blue butterfly onto my fashionable windbreaker. I also used an indelible marker to inscribe the words "one way" alongside a drawing of a hand with index finger pointing upward onto the breast pocket of my shirt. The meaning was that the all-embracing way of love was the only one for me. My approach to life in a land steeped in racist and divisive laws was to promote diversity and inclusion. My self-designed label resonated with the ethos of the One Love hashtag armband, which was worn by footballers recently in the lead up to the World Cup in Qatar, as a demonstration against intolerance within FIFA, the international football governing body, towards difference. Poetry is my preferred tool for inspiring love now as it was back then in my youth during apartheid. For me, poetry and the pursuit of human rights are wings of the same bird. Seeing as we emerge from the natural environment and return to it when we die, we are an extension of it. It is part of us as much as we are part of it. Our true nature is rooted in the environment. We have an African cultural tradition whereby the umbilical cord of a newborn baby is buried in the earth and a tree planted over the spot. This symbolizes our symbiotic relationship with the natural environment. In this way, we mark the sacredness of the tree, which we will not chop down wantonly because this is tantamount to suicide. This observance predates all campaigns for the protection of the environment. In ancient Africa, the best marimba was made from a hardwood tree struck by lightning. In this way, we were given the gift of music by the force of nature. We waited patiently for this gift. This is the gift of poetry. Nature is my most consistently reliable source of poetic inspiration because it is the repository of all poetry. Nature is the temple of my meditation. Out of my meditation, poetry flows through me to my people. A true poet acts as the nexus of a nation, the pulse of a people, the cultural consciousness of a country, and the spirit of a society. A poet's main function in society is to inspire the people through his or her gift of interpreting those aspects of being that are normally invisible to the rest of the community or society. In this way, poetry is the tongue of the gods. So on the question of decolonization, I'd just like to bring us to focus on that. Yesterday, I came across a Facebook post about the brilliant American bassist, singer, composer, and activist, Esperanza Spalding, who was making a stand against Harvard University, where she teaches music. Ms. Spalding's disaffection with the famed institution was based on their refusal to embrace her proposal for an educational initiative called Black Artist Educators Decolonizing and Placemaking. She wrote that she believes the program would help institutions and instructors, and I quote, move beyond metaphorical commitments to decolonial education, Black and Native solidarity, respectively, and reparations. Spalding was quoted as saying, I am no longer willing to endorse a cultural norm whereby artists and artist educators passively participate in and benefit from institutions born and bolstered through the justification and or ongoing practice of exploiting and destroying Black and Native life, close quote. We will remember that a few years ago, South African student activists initiated the campaign for the decolonization of education through their Roads Must Fall and Fees Must Fall hashtags that went viral across the globe. So my final thought in my introduction is that life is a work in progress. We are constantly searching for balance and alignment in this world towards the attainment of wholeness. And I hope I get a chance to read you, when it's convenient, with your permission, some poems that relate to this whole subject.
Well, thank you.
Sure, we're waiting for it.
May I read some now, just a few?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lovely.
We enjoyed your talk very much, sir. It was a fabulous talk. Now
Thank you
your
very
poetry,
much.
please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Some poetry. So the first, I mentioned the marimba, and so the first poem I'll read, I wrote in 2018, and it's dedicated to my mother, Nyamega Zingi Swambesho, and it's titled Marimba, Mother of Music. And the spirits who had remained unquenched arose one morning from a timeless dream confused by the absence of the sun. They awoke to the reality of the need to sing and dance, and so they supplicated themselves to the hidden song of the consecrated forest and felt the zestful rhythms pulsing within the hardened memory of the trees. The epiphany of tempered silence revealed to them the reservoir of melodies trapped in the amber resonance of the enchanted wood. And they sank into the swell of galvanized timbres to emerge again, but this time through the wound of melodic rapture. From then, it became known that the healing would happen always through song. The next one is...
Very nice.
Thank you. The next one is dedicated to my close comrade and leader of the Black Consciousness Movement, the man who gave his life to the struggle, Steve Biko, who, as you know, was murdered by the apartheid regime. The title is Meditation, Steve Biko. Crucifixion, juncture of byways of our shared blood. Here we meet at the arterial bifurcation of ancestral vision quests, when as a warrior chosen through dreams, embedded in amber wounds, cut deep into the hardwoods of the forests on the fringes of our savannas, you rose before the dawn to run the marathon to where the gift of epiphanies will be revealed. The third poem is Undying Truth, and it's dedicated, it was written in 2021, last year during COVID, during the COVID lockdown in the UK. I wrote a poem a day for a period of close to 2 years. And this is one of those poems. It's titled Undying Truth, and it's dedicated to Mthokozisi Ntumba, man of the people. He was shot by the South African police during a protest for decolonizing education at the University of the Witwatersrand, or what's called Wits University in Johannesburg. Undying Truth. Now you are no longer in our midst. We will name a street after you. We will plant a tree at the gateway to the forest that gave us the seed of the courage of your love. The dawn chorus will not be the same now that you are gone. For the light of morning that guided the birds into their harmonies came from the gift of your breath to us all. So we march, so when we march, it will not be to the grave, but to the granary, where your eternal wisdom is stored from the untimely harvest of your youth. And we will feast on the food of freedom, winnowed from the fearlessness of the truth of your witness.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation.
This is a great line. We will feast on the food of freedom. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So let's bring Selwyn and Don into the discussion a little bit here. So you guys, what do you believe the role of culture is in preserving a community and bringing in, like making a stance? Like, I mean, we used art in the struggle and in any struggle, and now we're using the digital platforms with hashtags and things like that. So what is your thoughts on the way language and poetry can present a challenge to authority that is being abused, and also what are your own contributions to literature today? So go ahead. I'll let Selwyn, if you want to talk.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you, Eugene, for those beautiful words. Thank you for the invitation, and to Dustin, happy Thanksgiving. I believe that's a vacation or holiday you celebrate in America. Yes, when I think back, Don and myself, we come from the same era, the 1980s, the turbulent 1980s. That was when, as Eugene will also allude to, that we come from riots and boycotts at school. And what I do remember is that my teacher, my career guidance teacher, asked me what I wanted to become one day. And in front of a full class, I told them that I wanted to become a writer. Now, you must understand that we are referred to in South Africa as coloreds. Now, we know in America, the colored word is connected to to the era of Martin Luther King. So I just want to bring in that understanding of the term colored in South Africa. It is derogatory, but there's no other connotation because we are in a situation where in a post-colonial world that we are not accepted, but we are accepted. We are not black, but we are black. And there's currently a lot of discussion around the term colored, especially from the Khoisan tribes. I'm not sure, Dustin, if you're familiar with the Khoisan and the Khoi. But coming back to school, I was asked what I wanted to become. I told my teacher that was 1984. I want to become a writer, and the whole class burst out laughing. And my teacher as well burst out laughing. He said, Selwyn, you're a colored. It's apartheid. You can't become a writer. You are colored. A writer is only meant for whites. My teacher, my career guidance teacher, said, you cannot become a writer because you are colored. And he laughed with the whole class. And, you know, that made me so determined to become a writer, which I am today. Don, do you want to add to your experience?
I will, yeah. I think I've got some problem. I'm not being seen by all of you, so
we can hear you though. So just go ahead and say what you will.
I'm obviously very honored to have all the panel today, especially getting Eugene Skeef on today, and Selwyn, and is it PRIYANKA? Yeah, PRIYANKA.
Yes, she's here.
Yeah. I'm here.
So far, it's been quite informative already, and already emotional, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think for my introduction, before I go through my poems tonight, on the issue of growing up, as Selwyn said about the term colored that was given to us and my family and my mixed race heritage and everything that culturally goes along with it, because I am from Black African and also German descent, and for some reason up to today my extended families has a big issue with informing me where exactly I come from, you know. So my family tree started out as in a family of within my family I was adopted, so that was a blessing all my life until now. That adopted family of mine is no more. So that's one side of my cultural experience, because in my home, growing up, apartheid was hidden from me, in the sense of television shows and news, and the television set was switched off when the troubles and the fight for freedom, was beginning to surface. But my understanding and my consciousness about it only exploded into my life on the first week at high school at Bella Secondary School in Cape Town, traditional, which it still is, colored school. So for all my primary years, all my primary life, I had a sort of zombie walk through my education. But in one of the poems I'm going to read, I somehow found my way to magazines, be it in Afrikaans or English. I found my way into actually taking a stance by myself, privately, without my family's help, because the apartheid and racial relations and all the troubles was never ever mentioned in our house. So somehow I had it in the back of my mind, because you can't hide something like that from a child. But at the age of 12, in the first week of my high school experience, suddenly I had to confront myself with what was happening in the streets around us. Even my immediate vicinity, the streets that we live in. You won't believe how some families and my own just did not want us to be exposed to it. It might sound strange, but that is my personal experience. But it all exploded around me on my first day at age 12, about to turn 13, when after initiation, whatever you call it, for first time at secondary school, the then government vehicles charged up to the gates. I've never seen combat army vehicles or any arsenal that the apartheid government and regime was going to throw to all school-going children. So my sort of entry into the consciousness of apartheid began at my first school week, in a conversation with friends in general. Suddenly there were tear gas canisters around me, and I've never experienced it myself. And so what I'm trying to say as my introduction is that apart from having had access to things like Reader's Digest, where I got my view of the world from, I thank my sister Ruth, who's not here today. She always used to leave the Reader's Digest volumes out. And in that way, I could actually teach myself about the world, politics, and personal development. But it was very difficult for me, and still is, to actually, I wouldn't want to be boxed in, but to this day, I still seek that identity, So my first poem, thanks for listening. I hope you can see me. My first one is called Rainbow Child, because for me, I don't see myself as a color. I turn black, if you may say so, during the summer months, but then I revert back to a very pale white. So that's why I just can't identify myself, but I identify myself as what I educated myself with. And I thank my teachers today, because they will see or hear this, my audio today. And I want to also, before reading my poem, say thank you to my high school teachers, especially, that gave me my route to becoming a teacher and getting a bursary to educate myself. I ended up after 8 years in teaching in South Africa, I was recruited to England to teach there, and I survived 10 years after it all came imploding to me because of racial identification by whoever I was working for. But anyway, Rainbow Child, because that is what I think. I call myself a rainbow child. I'm from the same human race as yours. My feet walk the same earth as yours. I breathe from the same oxygen layer as yours. My heart beats the same as yours. I feel the same physical pain as you. I have empathy too, but do you? You who frown at my mixed race colored skin with seasonal color changes, adapting to various weather conditions. I make no excuse for my proud intercultural, interracial heritage or my unique genetic legacy. It's just that you fail to really look at me or even acknowledge me. You judge my mother tongue accent, but my existence is no accident. I'm a part of humanity, so please to stop this ignorant insanity. I refuse to hide. I am proud to be a rainbow child.
Excellent poem. That's excellent. We really enjoyed
Beautiful.
your poetry. Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
I mean, you all are just fabulous. I enjoyed Skeef's poetry and also dance poems. So, Dustin,
I
what
think we can take
next?
a
So, what
brief
about
break. We can take a break
uh,
and do
okay,
a Pankhuri Sinha's poem here, and she's going to do a poem in regards to the British Raj, I believe, and I'll go ahead and add her in here, and we'll watch that. This is thanks for watching today.
and
Subscribe to our channel.
yeah, but what about
Hello and
music?
warm greetings
What
from
about
India. A few
Hang
points
on.
of post-colonial nature as in dealing with the theme of post-colonialism. The title of the first one is 1857, the year of the rebellion, when the crown took over from the company in terms of ruling India. So 1857, a poem. Though it was the year of 1942 that got immortalized in public memory due to a movie of the same name with the added adjective of a love story. And there were many love stories in the Raj. Nehru and Edwina were just one of them. And yes, they might top the list, but an entire generation of Anglo Indians came into being. But this isn't a love poem, or one about the legitimacy of love or about illegitimate love. Concerns both love and hate, perhaps hate more, and ways of curbing it. Conquering it, for the colonial Raj did one good thing. With its ideology of inherent superiority and economic exploitation, it first united the warring nation states, then the bickering religions, giving birth to a third, ultimately bringing them all together in opposition. Also drawing some permanent political lines, facilitating the creation of a nation. The year was 1947, but 1857 before that, the year of the rebellion, when the crown came in. We all know the story, right? I am a historian or a historian on a break, doesn't matter. What matters is that the twin nations need a reinvention, a remodeling, a renaissance, a reformation, risorgimento, a reincarnation, nothing less than a revolution. The Arab nations have done it for better or for worse, spilling blood from Gaddafi's Libya to Osama's Arabia. Some descended in war even when they were not Syria, and whether our twin brother, the difficult neighbor, needs it or not, we the secular, we the liberal, we the tolerant, we the cognizant, we the cosmopolitan, we the diverse, we the daring, we the respecting, need it. To come together again, to rebond not just in the face of threats and usurpation by the forever plotting others, but against being used by petty politics, dividing religions, humans, families. Can we, the people, not stand up, not rise up, not march, rebel, protest against the colonizing force, impulse, power of electoral politics? Half drugging, half sedating people with pranks, freebies, false promises, provoking speeches, and worse, silencing them with threats. Beatings, killings, wrongful arrests, disappearances, mayhem. This might be 2021, or on some days the darkness feels medieval, but I'm sure we can ask for more light. We can even make some. We can even make some and make it green and cool and peaceful, can't we? Can't we? And we also do remember the year 1942 as the year in between the Second World War, when Gandhi called for the Quit India movement, asking Indians to not fight in the wars of others over controls of colonies. We do remember, right? then why do we not act upon it as well in these post-colonial times of new Western interests? Thank you so much for hearing. So, there's a poem also talking about the perils of democracy, the post-colonial atmosphere, like people talk about, how the police can be still an instrument in the hands of the powerful. So, thank you for listening. Thank you so much to my dear friend Dustin Pickering for this opportunity. Hello, greetings from India. I am going to present another poem on the theme of post-colonialism. This is really, in today's times, paying tribute to the late Queen, who just passed away. The title is For the Queen. There is a picture of yours, Your Highness, of you laughing out loud in the face of adversity in challenging times with clouds of war gathering and hovering, not continental but spanning the world. Of course, some might say to look for beauty with death around is brutal. But someone needs to command, has to energize not just the troops standing to beat death with bare hands, but those at home safeguarding all for which wars are fought. That picture, along with a grave posture in an off-shoulder dress, bedeckled with jewels and the crown of the official coronation beams of royalty. At 25 only you looked regal. Point is, all these images inspire women regardless of country, marital status, sitting in their public or private offices, the myriad problems endlessly appearing in front of today's women, modernized, liberated, partially, need an inspiration no less than you, Your Highness. So this is very feminist, and in some ways you can also say it's a Marxist poem, even though Marxism typically doesn't talk of royalty, but this is saying that even the Queen can inspire the common people, right? And why should there be a bridge, a divide? I mean, of course, there always is, because one has to work one's way up, and inheritance is inheritance, but yet to maintain it, right? So that was my tribute to the late Queen. And now I wish to read one more poem for Salman Rushdie, wishing him good health and good luck with his big award nominations. Maybe next year, who knows, he gets a Nobel. The poem is called The Stabbing at Chautauqua. Deeply painful that, speaking for the writers exiled from America, Rushdie was attacked in the very same county called Chautauqua, which has a detention center which could also hold me on the manufactured charges of illegal immigration. So what if I had cruised on Lake Chautauqua more than once? Just as Biden bans Iran from possessing nuclear weapons forever, Khomeini's fatwa becomes the talk of the town. Forgotten again are the writers in exile. Long live Rushdie. Wish you speedy recovery, a life as meaningful, as brave as you've led. Come again to speak for those in exile. Speak in a safer place, dear sir, and speak for the safety of all. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to my dear poet friend and editor Dustin Pickering for the inviting for my poems. Thank you. I hope you like and enjoy.
That was Pankhuri Sinha in India. I want to thank her as well, and I would like to thank Priyanka for bringing us into this community today. I believe Don had some more poems he would like to read for us.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So the next one is I Am Africa Diva. I, Diva. I'm the legend of millennia. My story still epically riddled with fear. At the dawn of time, my worth rather sublime, my gift to man painfully warped, a warped, perceived divine crime, instinct and intuition, my lifetime ambition, abused and violently misused, even glorified in European human freak shows. Laws of man and land could not break me. Even through their scarlet imprints, they refused to see my earthly connection. Created by atomic friction or whichever God you believe in, my universal appeal still causing global contradiction. I'm still a pulsating, life-giving, fierce force, witness to senseless and devouring, devastating, cultural, existential, depleting, divisive, unnecessary, destructive, deleting wars. My legacy will be historically murmured forever, for I am always and will be diva. I, Phoenix. I rise from the bitter charred doomed ashes of apartheid, spreading my determined liberated fiery wings, melting my inherited derisive chains from generations of captured minds. I rise, proudly soaring even higher to realize my true possible potential, my growing confidence consequential, my proud lineage historical, my forefathers and mothers existentially influential as I burn off the gangrenous remains of a racial ideology in flames, writhing headlessly, aimlessly. I rise, cradle of mankind, my homeland, South Africa, and indeed Africa, where ancient stones and bones echo my generation's global heritage, reverberating our desperate ancient moans of extinction, of human succession found in paleoanthropological revelatory missions, introducing us to Mrs. Bless, our 2.3 million-year-old ancestor, she who reminds us to cleanse ourselves from searing detrimental hate and bitter jealousy, as well as hungering for earthly thrones and cancerous animosity. I say this to you, let universal love permeate through you, igniting your peaceful inner halo to finally soar higher than you ever imagined and to own your destiny and say, I'm possible. My message to the rainbow nation, I willingly drown in the colors of us, the beauty of us, as I languish in my nation's metamorphosis, whilst disintegrating apartheid toxic dust. Never and never again will we allow the disintegration of our beautiful nation. Yellow, my new inner flow, radiated by the African sun. Red, proud of my multiracial blood, defining me, empowering me, liberating me, reviving me. I'm blue, my inner peace reflected in these African skies, above two oceans, kissing and hugging our South African shores, leaving its showers of blessing imprinted on our DNA. Breathe for yet another cleansing day. Green, giving me breath of life. Our fauna and flora unique in the world. We hope to protect, nurture, and live in harmoniously blissful coexistence, but only if we insist to truly try and resist our carbon footprints to ensure future green, necessary persistence for new generations. Black, despite our unfortunate dark-tainted history, we all share its languishing chemistry. And thank you for listening. Honored to have been part of that. For personal reasons, I will have to leave you all at this junction. I have to take care for someone. Thank you very much.
So much, Don, for joining us.
Thank
Wonderful
you very
poem.
much, Don.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Don. Beautiful words, brother.
Thank you very much, Don. We really enjoyed your poetry.
Don't worry. I will. When the recording comes up, I will share and share and share. Thank you. You are all awesome, and see you soon.
Yeah,
Thank you,
good
Don.
night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
On the
So-
theme of the Rainbow Nation that Don read about, I'm in Port Elizabeth, in Nelson Mandela Bay. Now, Port Elizabeth was renamed Kebega recently. Now, the Rainbow Nation the first Rainbow Nation hails from Port Elizabeth, because in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, I'm sure Eugene will remember this, that South End was the first Rainbow Nation after District 6. Now, District 6 was also a mixed race suburb in Cape Town, where people were forcibly removed with bulldozers and with army tanks and trucks, because the white government decided that District 6 will be a white area. The same happened in South End here in Port Elizabeth. That Rainbow Nation was forced out because they declared that area a white area. So I wrote a poem to celebrate the Rainbow Nation of South End. And if I may, I will read to you Angels of South End. Now, in the poem, you will hear famous names like Madiba, Ethel Fugard, John Carney, Steve Biko, George Buerta, and you will also hear something about the Queen, because it's all part of our colonial past. So the title of the poem is Angels of South End. South End, through your streets I went wandering, saw Sir Donkin and Madiba smiling. In Strand Street, cries I hear louder than seagulls on the pier, acting out its pleasures and woes like Fugard and Carney in Ellows. Strolling through your townships, blinded by the sun and silvery shacks, I still see Steve Biko and George Buerta, sheltered by angels from above. The Queen watches over City Hall for future years and every nightfall, and South End's Rainbow Nation flies on wings of emancipation. Now I salute families no one could divide, and never again be parted, nor be sad or broken-hearted. Now, today we live in a society, I just want to come back to the apartheid theme. Today we live in a society where people live more in harmony than before, and there are more opportunities, equal opportunities, than during the apartheid era. Now, we all know that during the apartheid era, equal opportunities and to live in harmony and to live in luxury was only afforded to whites. And I've been reflecting a lot about how my school experiences during the apartheid years had shaped me. And way back in 1985, I alluded to this earlier, during the turbulent time in South Africa's political history, I mentioned about my career guidance teacher, who asked me to share what my dreams and vision is. And I said, I wanted to become a writer, and he burst out laughing. He said, "You'll never become a writer because you're a colored." And as I mentioned today, I'm a writer, a published writer. But the thing is, my friends, that even though apartheid is gone, we still live with a legacy of apartheid. And this is where the fight for decolonization comes in, where we live with remnants, and we'll still live with a people, some of them, that have the idea that the white race is the right race and it's the perfect race. Now, there's a powerful quote by the Italian poet Salvatore Quasimodo, who says, "The politician wants men to know how to die courageously, and the poet wants men to live courageously." And this is another platform that DUSTIN has given us to live courageously as poets. And as Eugene has also mentioned, that the poets are in fact the gods. We are the conscience of society. And if I can come back to what we have, we had the pandemic for a few years, and it has wreaked havoc with education, because we still live with the remnants of apartheid, where children from previously disadvantaged communities, the blacks and the coloreds, they still have basic needs like a classroom where there's air conditioning or where there are chairs and tables, some of the children are still being taught under trees in South Africa, which is preposterous, which is never advertised or shown on the news around the world. So that's part of the decolonization that we want to bring into effect. But it's such a hard and tough struggle, as Eugene has also mentioned, that the fees must fall that happened a few years ago, where university students decided that they are not going to pay these increases in education fees. And I'm talking now about the born frees, those born after the end of apartheid. And they come from poor working class families. And they started to protest at the University of the Witwatersrand, and they started protesting at the University of Cape Town. And through social media, it became known as the Fees Must Fall protest. But the protest has changed education dramatically. The education landscape has changed because of these young people, just like the class of 1976, who decided they're going to rise up in Soweto and fight for their future. Because Mandela said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. A great friend of Gandhi, of course. That's my part I wanted to share about the Rainbow Nation that Don was sharing with us in his poem.
Well, thank you so much for the history and the poetry and everything. I mean, that was really wonderful. I'm unmute Priyanka. Sorry about that. Mute everybody. So we're waiting for Jagari to come on. She should be here shortly. Eugene, would you like to add anything to any of the things we've said so far?
Actually, Dustin, thanks for your perspicacity. You're very sharp, brother. You could tell spiritually that I was itching to say something. I've got to say that Selwyn, I'm saying this to everybody, but I'm praising Selwyn for his incredibly stimulating contribution and contextualization of the whole business of what it means to be a creative artist, a poet in particular, in our case right now, and what it means to mobilize our communities through our art. So just to go back a bit in support of Selwyn, in fact, you'll see, Selwyn, that I wrote a comment that I said, thanks for your poem. Indeed, I know that history. And in fact, I used to drive John Carney and Winston Joner to Ethel Fugard's home to improvise and create plays. For the benefit of the rest of you, the man, Ethel Fugard is, one of South Africa's most renowned playwrights. When I was an activist in the 70s, under the auspices of the Black Consciousness movement that was led by Steve Biko, who I mentioned earlier and for whom I wrote a poem, and who you guys must know because he was one of our most famous activists against, for the demolition of apartheid. Just to tell you about myself very briefly, by way of praising Selwyn, I used to write plays, Dustin. When I was in high school, I wrote theater plays in school, and the plays were performed in the community. And all the plays that I wrote, as well as the poetry, I didn't look at them as separate entities because the plays were poetic and my poems were dramatic. I would go into the community, and my poems would mobilize the people on issues of apartheid, of water shortage, of lack of school benches, like Selwyn was saying, is still the case in many cases in South Africa, in various parts of it. So that's my background, and my writing, my creativity was a tool for transforming society. It gave me the courage that Selwyn talks about, so that I reduced my fear, of the brutality of the regime. I also mastered Afrikaans, which wasn't my first language, but I got double A's in Afrikaans at school. And the reason I mastered the language was so that I could then go and defend myself in the midst of the Afrikaners. So here's an example, for instance. I was driving Steve Biko once from a university, the University of, it used to be called the University of Zululand in KwaZulu-Natal in the old days. You know, it's called something else now. And I was driving the VW Kombi that belonged to the Black Consciousness Movement that Steve Biko was a leader of. And there was a roadblock, and the roadblock was a typical kind of police roadblock by the special branch who knew Steve Biko's movements, and they were always trying to catch him. So I was the driver, and as soon as we got to the roadblock, I would get out quickly and use my Afrikaans to bamboozle the Afrikaner and fascinate him with my language. And he would say, you know, like, "Je praat dan suiwer Afrikaans," you know, refined Afrikaans. That's the translation. He couldn't believe that a kafir, you know, a black, you know, like the N word, you know, kafir, kafa, was equivalent to the N word, you know. And he'd call me that and say he couldn't believe that someone like myself could master his language so beautifully. And in the time of his bamboozlement, that would give Steve Biko and the others a chance to get out of the vehicle and get rid of, hide in amongst the cornfields, any incriminating evidence like banned literature and that kind of stuff, you know. So yeah, we were tricksters.
Story.
Yeah,
that is quite a story there. Thanks for sharing that. I would Jagari, are you prepared now for your presentation?
Yes, I'm prepared now. Okay, I had fallen asleep and you had shaken me out of my sleep when you.
It is pretty late there. Go ahead and get started with your presentation. We'll love to hear it.
Oh, yes, sure. So when we talk about post-colonialism and we talk about post-colonial literature, we mainly talk about, not mainly, but we also talk about Indian poetry in English. And we cannot have Indian poetry in English without our foremother, that is Toru Dutt. Because when Indians first started writing poetry in English, the British critics dismissed them as being imitative. And the Indian poets writing in English, also known as the Indo-Anglian poets, did try to imitate the British Romantics and Victorians. And it was Toru Dutt who broke away from that tradition and kind of wrote about Indian topics, and she was the first successful Indian poet writing in English.
Jagari, your voice is breaking.
Oh, is it clear now?
I could hear her clearly myself, every word.
Not much clear.
I think maybe you're in PRIYANKA. I can hear her just fine.
Or you can just rejoin.
But everybody else could listen to me properly.
Go ahead,
Should I
Jagari. Fine. I think there's some issues with PRIYANKA's side, but if I can hear you just fine. Go ahead.
Okay, in that case, I'll just continue. Okay. So I've prepared a paper and I'll read and talk alternately. Just as European Renaissance signified the birth of modern Europe, the Indian Renaissance, which began in the early phase of the 19th century, resulted in the birth of modern India. It may be described as the awakening of the mind, soul, or psyche of the nation after a long or short span of sleep. In other words, it is the emergence and unhampered functioning of the free and creative spirit of the country. During this time, the spread and the influence of English language and Western culture in India was remarkable. Toru Dutt was a distinguished author in the Indo-Anglian literature. Though her work is meager, but it is of lasting worth, and we must judge by quality and not quantity. Toru's works provide us with insights into the literacy and social change that took place not only in the late 19th century India, but also in Europe. Coming as she did in the wake of the Cultural Renaissance, Toru wrote, in the few years she was destined to live, some exquisite poetry displaying an amazing maturity of mind and feeling. Uh, and Toru was this is those who know about Toru that know that she was fluent not only in English and Bengali but also in French and Sanskrit. And in fact, she was the first Indian ever to write an entire novel in French, which was published posthumously by the French company Didier. So, about her life, she was born on March 4th, 1856, to a Hindu family. Her father was a good poet and linguist, Govind Chandra Dutt, and her mother, Kshetramuni, was well versed in Bengali and English and translated the blood of Jesus from English into Bengali, because in 1862 the Dutt family converted to Christianity. Toru had two siblings, Aru and Abju. Unfortunately, she was to lose both of them to tuberculosis, then known as consumption. In 1869, the family left for Europe. The girls went to a French school in Nice. In 1870, the family went to Italy and England, where the girls started their French translations and attended the higher lectures for women at Cambridge. In 1873, the Dutt family returned to Kolkata, and in 1874, Toru's sister Aru died of consumption. The only work that Toru Dutt saw published in her lifetime was her volume of translations from French to English, which is titled A Sheaf Gleaned in French Fields. It was published by Saptahik Sambat Press at Bhawanipur in March 1876. It attracted rave reviews and sold out very soon. E.J. Thompson reviewed the book and observed, and I quote, Toru Dutt remains one of the most astonishing women that ever lived. A woman whose place is with Sappho and Emily Bronte, fiery and unconquerable of soul as they. End of quote. The book contained translations from Victor Hugo, Baudelaire, Émile Deschamps, Du Bellay, Lamartine, and many others. Unfortunately, Toru herself was not to enjoy success for long. She died of consumption at the age of 21. More of her works were published posthumously. The French novel titled The Journal of Mademoiselle d'Arvers, an English novel titled Bianca or the Spanish Maiden, a second volume of verses, ancient ballads and legends of Hindustan, and others. It is no use introducing Toru Dutt to an international audience without reading any of her works. So I will read a sonnet by hers, and it's a well-known sonnet titled The Lotus. The Lotus by Toru Dutt. Love came to Flora asking for a flower that would of flowers be undisputed queen. The lily and the rose long, long had been rivals for that high honor. Bards of power had sung their claims. The rose can never tower like the pale lily with her Juno mien. But is the lily lovelier? Thus between flower factions rang the strife in Psyche's bower. Give me a flower delicious as the rose, and stately as the lily in her pride. But of what color? Rose red love first chose, then prayed, no, lily white. Or both provide. And Flora gave the lotus rose red dyed and lily white, the queenliest flower that blows. So, in a way, this poem, as we could see, is situated in the Western mythology, where Flora and Juno and flower factions are referenced. But in the end, the poet, the choice of the flower is that of the lotus, which is the national flower of India, and which is symbolic of Toru Dutt, although she is entrenched in French and English literature. Ultimately, towards the end of her life, she chose Indian subjects to write on in the English language. The poem has been seen as asserting the superiority of the East over the West. But in other interpretations, it has also been seen as an amalgamation of the best of the East and the West, the rose and the lily, taking the best of both their attributes. One gets lotus, which is the queenliest flower that blows. So an amalgamation of the best of the East and the West. So this was a very brief introduction to Toru Dutt. In 5 minutes or in 10 minutes, one cannot really fathom the kind of poet and writer she was. I'll end by quoting the noted French critic and writer James Darmestater, and I quote, "This daughter of Bengal, so admirably and so strangely gifted, Hindu by race and tradition, and English woman by education, a French woman at heart, a poet in English, prose writer in French, who, at the age of 18, made India acquainted with the poets of France in the rhyme of England, who blended in herself 3 souls and 3 traditions, and died at the age of 20, in the full bloom of her talent and on the eve of the awakening of her genius. Presence in the history of literature, a phenomenon without parallel." Thank you very much.
So much, Jagari. I'm going to add Selwyn back to the stream here. So I think we lost Priyanka. I'm going to try to sort of maintain some dignity on air while we're here and see if I can get her back on. But what I'm going to do, my good ZM Wise has created a video of a recital of the first canto of the Hesiod, which is an excellent epic, and I'm going to play this. It's about 6 minutes or so, so bear with us.
Good evening and welcome back, poetry lovers. It is IZM Wise, and here I am with another home recording just for you. Today I'm going to be reading an excerpt from Canto 1 of the Hesiod. His heart burned but for glory, not one whit for worldly pleasure, dead indeed to it, true friend and tender husband, slave who never faltered, foe of the haughty, base, soul ever free, even when, in shackles bound, resigned, he stooped to labors of the vilest kind. To tyrants he displayed the panoply of all those virtues flayed by slavery, but soon his valor rang with cries of war. He joined its pains to pains endured before, new efforts to the woes of old, and those who followed, with triumphant hands, arose to pluck the palms of glory in his path. Now, liberator in war's aftermath, great nation's father and lawgiver he, a holy pact that his sagacity set firmly forth, became the very base on which the independent Haitian race was founded. Pact that, altar consecrated with solemn vows, will long stand venerated. Already day shines forth, the cloudless sun bespeaks heaven's desires in unison. The waves break softly, each on each. The breeze blows scarce a ruffle on the swaying sea's expanse. The earth has drunk the tears, long drawn, from languid blooms, gold chalice that new dawn lets fall. Birds rend the air, bright-hued they seem, to trace flowers on the azure fair. The stream, flowing over the greensward, mutters by, only the echoes murmurs its reply. Suddenly, at the conch shell's blaring sound, the thankful blacks from all sides gather round their hero. Toward the cap their troops advance over the plains, brows decked in elegance, beflowered maidens march, leading the way. Their pious hands strew many a fair bouquet about the altars, and in gilded stands incense burns. On the church front statue bands of Christ's apostles, bound by holy writ, shine on the august precinct exquisite. Sun's timid rays reflect its glorydom, sign of mankind's salvation sure to come. Voices rise up, the heavens' height inspires, hymns intuned by celestial angel choirs. A fluttering plume, wind blown over the air, draws all eyes to the hero bowed in prayer. The succor of the judge supreme he seeks, protector of the just, who curses wreaks when wreak he must, and begs him hear the oath, whose noble sentiments he will be loath to violate. He mounts a mare at length, filched indeed from the Frenched, whose feverish strength has long been proven. Hooves impatient pound, brazen clawed, rip the bosom of the ground. Beneath, mane floating in the wind, a flood of foam spews from her lips, awash in blood. Abounding as recalcitrant, she pits the power of her flesh against the bit's detested steel. Upon the hero's breast waves the three-colored sash of triumph's quest. Casting his dominating gaze far wide, he seeks his rivals in the ranks beside their men. Now here they come, proud of long years in noble service, doughty cavaliers, old and scar-covered on the march. How many times in the bloody heat of battle, any and all would save the state at risk of life and limb. Christophe and the dauntless leads them rife with guilty thoughts, on base ambition bent. Christophe himself, whose prideful youth was spent, remembering the lost rights of his race and of his roots, wild tiger on the chase, shamed by his shackles, yearning for a score of years to know his fatherland once more, and who, with Haiti now unyoked and free, enjoying the sweet fruits of liberty, dreams again to enslave her, no mere whim, and quench the thirst for power devouring him. Dust-browed, there follow some 6,000 strong, stout cavaliers swept fervently along, spears, javelins poised, lunging with quivering tread. Behind brave Dessalines they plunge ahead. Dessalines, mortal man whose unabated horror would lead to frenzied hate ill-fated. Savage-most pride shines on his face, and he demands his warrior equals fealty and their humble obedience. In vain would he attempt to veil his heart, constrain its innermost desires. His haughty tongue reveals the conqueror, his mind unstrung, untamed to duty, thirsts for power his own, answers to none but himself alone. The day will come when, fouling free men's thanks, laurel conferred, jeering, he joins the ranks of hateful killers drunk on blood. That day when his own land becomes his fateful prey. 10,000 more, veterans all, march proud to take their orders from Clairvaux, unbowed by age, who, wise beyond his youthful years, has earned the admiration of his peers, turning his back on Europe's luxury. Sans peur and sans reproche, new Bayard, he, following him comes Gideon, whose fame bestows the prize of glory on his name. Young rivals, boon companion, quick to sing their deeds, he scorns his own. Only one thing, one sole ambition, moves his soul to fire men's heart with heavenly burning flame inspire, his troops to spurn repose, to heed the call of love and country and be heroes all. On that day will his famous godly band shine once more in its soldierly command. Thrice victory is theirs, thrice by their toil undone are they who covet Haiti's soil. Thank you very much, Poetry Lovers. Thank you for listening. Poetry lives. Long live the arts.
Thank you for that, ZM Wise. We just had Priyanka on, and I just lost her again. This seems to be one of these days where the technology is not wanting to cooperate. She was going to present a poem at the end here, and I guess we can wait just a second and see if we can get her back. I'm going to add her to the stream. There you are. Thank you so much, Priyanka, for your patience. After all, you're our moderator, so thank you so much for being back with us. Do you want to cap us off with a poem, and then I'll play one last music video at the end here for people to...
Yeah, it was due to technical glitches that I was absent for a long time. I'm extremely sorry. I couldn't hear Jagari Mukherjee's paper. I was really interested in it. Anyways, tonight I would love to read out a poem of that was written in 2020, and my first book that will be published very soon, Touches and Turbulences. The book begins with this poem. It's about refugee. The title of the poem is Refugee, Who Are You? They are marching forward. They understand the language of bullets, which the homeless naked child interprets as the burst out cracker that amuses God too in his beautiful abode, where no thorny cactus pines away for water. They are marching forward with the crusaders' zeal, knowing how the bomb rips apart the heart. They don't know the difference between black and white. Red is the color that symbolizes the right to live and breathe. Unfortunately, blood has only one color, and heaven too respects the color of life. And massacre, God secretly erases curse by weaving tales of glory, holy love, and divine justice. Guided by powerful instincts and drones, they step into the other's city. Where the hungry live without belongings. They don't know that there are no boundaries to one's dreams. They believe that bondage of soul is meaningless. They throw away the homeless child of Ethiopia or Syria who crosses the desert or the ocean alone, visualizing heaven and his mother's face in a daydream. His identity is lost forever. A new identity powerfully grasps the soul, though the boots resist his split self to be a part of the whole. Their mad uproar disturbs his sleepless nights in the displacement camps. Who are you? Are you a child or a refugee? You go to schools in camps, but you arrive covered in mud, having walked miles upon miles to attend. Refugee, the shelterless refugee, forget about your native language and land. Forget about those black strong hands of your father, grandfather, brother who were searching for the roots, defying bullets and raids. Forget about those blue butterflies which were reluctant to smell your mother's beautiful black body that was dragged into the garden for fun and then was torn apart by the wolves or invisible ghosts. Who are you? There is the dark city and no light. You are swaying, wandering, and your heart is beating fast. You hardly can whisper aloud. You are not allowed to shout. The honorable Lord has no mercy for you. Wars forever evoke fear. Wars for land or for love. Wars for possession or for ruthless, brutal torture. Wars for faith or for faithlessness. You stand alone with your empty, rebellious eyes. You know that the lies will never generate promises of a new rise. Who are you? Are you the categorized other, the margin and not the center, the border and not the land, the crippled, half-paralyzed body without hands and limbs? Are you a beast searching for the ocean, digging deep holes in sand in the desert, an alienated, lost human being growing up silently with a choked-up voice that's not allowed to raise as a dignified voice of protest? Who are you? Who are you? Shout, speak up, contradict and wake up before it's too late and the vast desert engulfs your soul and you lose your existence forever in the world of silence and become none in the crowd. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Priyanka, and thanks everybody for watching World Inkers Network today. And we had a wonderful discussion, post-colonial poetry, the traumatized race speaks up. Go back, if you missed some of it, it's going to be recorded on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. And in the conclusion here, enjoy a wonderful presentation video of music by Joe Kidd and Sheila Burke. I'm going to play this now for you, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.
Now this next song that we're going to do has become a world music standard in a way. We wrote this a few years ago, and since then it has appeared on a number of albums, a number of benefit records, one for Fukushima, people suffering in Japan, and also a couple of years ago it appeared on Songs for Standing Rock, Volume 5. And it's called Waiting for That Flower to Bloom. And I think it's a good time to sing that song. I've been waiting for that telephone call, waiting for that train. I've been waiting for that mountain to fall, waiting for that plane. I've been waiting for this movie to start, waiting for the word. I've been waiting for this pain in my heart, waiting to be heard. Yeah, yeah. I've been waiting for the bombs to stop falling, waiting to be free. I've been waiting for my prayer and my calling, I've been waiting for that flower to bloom such a long time. I'll be waiting for my dream to come true for the rest of my life. Yeah, yeah.
Listen to the people, listen to humanity, listen to the Parrot, Parrot TV.